I just started recording and I realized that I didn't grab a drink before I started, so this is going to be a real painful experience. Hey there, guys. What's up? My name is Hayden McKenzie. Welcome to episode 2 of With Hayden. Today, with Hayden, we're going to be discussing the work of one David Lynch. Now, David Lynch is one of the most influential filmmakers of all time, in my opinion, and one of my favorite filmmakers. Over the past few months, I've become familiar with some of his work, and honestly, it's impacted me in a way that I never really figured possible with mainstream filmmaking, really. I am referring mainly to his work on Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet. Those seem to be the works of his that hit me the hardest. I watched Inland Empire and Eraserhead. Neither of those really struck me as much as these two did. Granted, the talent is still there and the ambition is still there. It is so admirable, the way that David Lynch manages to take these very weird concepts and put them to the screen in a very, maybe not coherent, more of at least an understandable way. A way where you can watch something like Eraserhead or Twin Peaks and see the abstract, almost avant-garde things at play and not take them for just weird for the sake of weird. Like, you know that it has a deep-seated purpose somewhere in there, whether it's pretentious or not. I mean, that's up for debate. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say that he's a total saint, because he has very harsh opinions on multiple parts of the film world and the not film world, which I'm not gonna go into at all because I'm frankly not knowledgeable enough to talk about anything like that. But what I mainly want to talk about today is two of Lynch's most iconic works, for better or worse. We have Twin Peaks and we have Dune. Now, Twin Peaks took me a while to get through. I started it with a buddy around April, I want to say April or May, and we got through season 1 pretty quickly, but then about midway through season 2, we stopped watching almost altogether. I want to say we stopped watching the show for almost 2 months before picking it back up, and even then progress was very slow. And so one day I said, hey man, I would love to finish the series, and I know that you probably wouldn't, so I'm just going to carry on without you. And I finished the whole show, including the return season, in 3 days. It was one of the most chaotic binge watching experiences of my life, because I've never seen anything so sloping and vast in terms of quality. For those of you who don't know, season 1 of Twin Peaks aired in 1990, and it was incredibly successful. It was fucking huge. And season 2 comes around, and basically creators David Lynch and Mark Frost, they were planning on keeping the murder of... Oh, I'm going to spoil the fuck out of Twin Peaks, by the way, so spoiler warning. They were planning on keeping the murder mystery of Laura Palmer sort of the emotional through line throughout the whole series. So we would never really find out who killed her, except the network, about halfway through season 2, said, No, that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is you are going to tell us who killed Laura Palmer midway into season 2. So Lynch and Frost begrudgingly agree to do this. They reveal who killed Laura Palmer, and it was... Sorry guys, I don't mean to spoil it for you, but it was actually Leland Palmer. And after that, ratings totally tanked, because that was the whole through line of the show, was solving the mystery of Laura's murder. And of course, there were these other plot lines growing and evolving outside of that, but the main emotional core of the series was Laura Palmer, her spirit. So after that was essentially voided midway through the season, not only did the showrunners not have anywhere to go, but the series was effectively over. There was nowhere to go, there was nothing else to explore, because the murder had been solved. Most of the characters had no reason to continue doing what they were doing. So after Laura's killer is found out, spoiler alert, Leland Palmer, her dad, Dale Cooper just kind of stays in town, I guess. He never bothers to he's just like, oh, I'm just gonna live here for a while. I'm gonna take off my suit, put on a flannel, and just live my life, man. Which is, I guess that's fine. But what happened was a lot of filler. Season 2 is chock full of filler. To a disgusting degree, to the point where full episodes are just arcs that don't matter, cross-cutting between arcs that just don't fucking matter. And sadly, most of season 2 ultimately does not matter. There are scenes with certain characters that you could literally just skip and it would make no difference. So if you haven't seen season 2 of Twin Peaks yet, sorry, I just fucking ruined it for you. But any scene after James leaves town, skip it. Just fucking skip it. You'll see him in like a house, a mansion with a MILF trying to fix her car or something like that. Just skip it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. Towards the end of season 2, James just leaves. He just fucking leaves. He's like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna go to the big city or some shit. Skip it. You can skip it. It would not impact anything. And I wish I knew that when I was watching Twin Peaks, because God, season 2 was just impossible to limp through, and it's so long too. It's 22 episodes. With something like Star Trek: The Next Generation or something like that, I could see why the seasons were having upwards of 20 episodes, because despite the fact that it was a narrative television show, it was a serial. So really, it was just a different villain of the week, effectively, every episode. So there's no real narrative through line. I mean, obviously it's the same cast of characters and stuff like that, but it's not telling one grand epic story, which Twin Peaks was. So having a 20 episode season, having to fill that all with effective narrative content is incredibly difficult, because filling out what is effectively an 18-hour story as opposed to filling out 20 different 40-minute stories, it's a totally different ballpark. So yeah, Twin Peaks Season 2 really just fell flat on its face. And if I'm being totally honest, if I was going to revisit the series, I probably wouldn't watch Season 2 again. I might watch up to episode 7 or 8 whenever they find out who killed Laura Palmer, because the actual episode in which we find out who killed Laura Palmer is incredible. It's one of the best episodes of the whole series, in my opinion. So much drama, and despite the fact that it happened way too prematurely, and I definitely feel like that the show could have gone on for a very, very long time if the broadcaster didn't force them to finish the story. I just so desperately wish it got the time that it deserved. But the episode itself in which we do find out who killed Laura Palmer is pretty good. I have to give that to them. The culmination of it all is satisfying. It's just, despite the fact that one solitary moment is satisfying, it sort of ruins everything to come after it, effectively, which sucks. It really does suck, because Twin Peaks is such a unique show, and it was such a formative show. It came around in a time that was very formative for television. It was about 15 years before the start of the golden age of television, with stuff like Mad Men and Breaking Bad. And so I like to think that I don't like to think, I think it's very much proven that without Twin Peaks, we wouldn't have shows like Mr. Robot, shows like Breaking Bad, The Sopranos. None of that would be possible without Twin Peaks. And you hear things like this, and you think, oh wow, this show must be just an absolute fucking masterpiece. And I want to say a solid 50 or 60% of it is, but the filler and everything in between is just such a drastic downfall in terms of quality. It honestly tampers my view of the whole show, if I'm being totally honest. But I suppose I'm going to get into a discussion of each season individually, starting off with Season 1. Season 1 is, in my opinion, one of the best seasons of television that I've ever consumed. I honestly was not expecting it to blow me away as much as it did. Just the pilot alone is filled with its own satisfying peaks and valleys. By the end of it, you feel like you've watched a complete story, and then it continues, and it's all the more satisfying after that. Honestly, I don't think I've never seen anything like Twin Peaks Season 1, and I don't think I ever will again. And What's really astounding to me is just how tonally distinct Twin Peaks Season 1 is from something like Twin Peaks Season 3, which we'll get into in a bit. But Twin Peaks Season 1 was, it has such an incredibly familiar tone, and it almost creates like a vibe, because the town that the series is based in, the town of Twin Peaks, it allows for such a lovely atmosphere. Like, whenever I get to thinking about Twin Peaks, I think of like a forest in the morning, you know. It just, whenever you watch the show, you feel the environment that it takes place in, and it's really something that I haven't gotten out of any piece of media before. Really, it's really something. And on top of that, it's got a brilliant cast of characters. It does such a great job of juggling the surreal and the normal, well, maybe not normal, but just what was the standard for television back in the day. Because the first episode has a feel like you're watching a sort of vintage crime drama from the 90s, which is what it is. It sets you up. The first 3 episodes of season 1 are really like a by the books TV thriller by design, because by the end of season 3 we get the iconic dream sequence involving Dale Cooper, Laura Palmer, and the man from another place, which is one of the creepiest fucking characters in the history of television, and I will never forget that man, I swear. It's astounding to me, because it was really able to ease the audience into a more surreal type story. So by the time season 3 comes around, the audience is fully immersed in the mind of David Lynch, and it was a very accessible thing for people who weren't familiar with Lynch at the time, because by 1990, obviously Lynch was a known character in the film industry with films like Eraserhead and Blue Velvet, but in terms of just pure mainstream groundswell, he didn't get much, and Twin Peaks really cemented his place as a mainstream director. So to allow him to break into the mainstream with this and ease the audience into more surreal, absurdist type content, it's honestly brilliant in my opinion. It does such a good job of throwing the viewer into something that they've just never seen before. And I just so desperately wish that would have been carried on into season 2. Now, of course, after the network told Lynch and Frost to reveal who killed Laura Palmer and effectively ruin the show, Lynch left the project altogether. He completely stopped. He completely left Twin Peaks, and by the end of it, he was like, okay, listen, guys, stop fucking this up. I'll write the finale. And Lynch wrote and directed this what eventually became the series finale. It got canceled after season 2, and it was absolutely phenomenal. Like, what is that, episode 22, maybe 23 of season 2 is just astounding, and it amazes me to this day that was even allowed on network television. Like, that is some of the craziest, weirdest, most disturbing shit that I've ever seen, and it never verges into the territory of like torture porn. It's not gory. It's not even, well, it's definitely over the top, but it's never fully in your face, because everything that happens feels fitting to the story. Almost the entirety of the series finale takes place in the Black Lodge, so, you know, obviously weird shit happens in the Black Lodge. And yeah, just to this day, it astounds me that aired on, what was it, ABC, maybe CBS, something like that. I don't know, I'm not your fucking dad. I wasn't even alive when that show was airing. But yeah, just a brilliant send-off to what was ultimately a very, very disappointing and mediocre season of television. And by the end of season 2, that finale was good enough to keep me excited for Twin Peaks: The Return, which of course was made nearly 30 years after Twin Peaks ended. Oh shit, I'm completely forgetting to talk about the movie Fire Walk with Me. So if you're going about watching Twin Peaks, you're going to want to watch seasons 1 and 2, and then watch Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me is a 1992 film written and directed by David Lynch, and is primarily a prequel to the Twin Peaks story. Follows Laura Palmer, the fucking train, again, I'm so sorry. Follows Laura Palmer in the last week of her life before Leland Palmer, though he is being possessed by Bob, inevitably kills her. And that film is great. It takes everything that I loved about season 1 of Twin Peaks, i.e. the absurdist qualities, the lovely characters, and the setting that I've come to love so much, and gives it a much more fleshed out cinematic feel, which is to be expected. I mean, it's a movie. But really, it does such a good job of almost not necessarily carrying the story onward because it takes place in the past, but despite the fact that it does take place in the past, it does a pretty good job of giving you some sort of closure to the Twin Peaks story. Like, it could have ended there and I would have been at least marginally satisfied. And of course, that was the end for many, many years. There's a lot of dark shit in Fire Walk with Me. Obviously, the whole not MacGuffin, but the whole climax of the film that you're dreading as you watch it because you know exactly what's going to happen. It's like a deer in the headlights. You're just caught and you can't do anything about it. You just know it's going to come, is Laura Palmer's murder. And it's some haunting shit. It's incredibly dark, incredibly disturbing. It doesn't let up, you know. It goes hard, and by the time it's over, you're kind of just left there empty. You really don't have a choice but to soak in and try to manufacture the emotion that you should be feeling for this story. It's really just some gutting shit, and that's really the best word that I could think of for it, is gutting. I feel like I've been very surface level in my discussion of this, so allow me to go a bit deeper down. Shall we talk about the characters? I mentioned the characters briefly earlier. I think that the characters of Twin Peaks, it's a vast list of characters. I want to say there's 40 or 50 main characters in the television series that you're following, cross-cutting between the whole time, and it's a lot. It's a lot of plot lines to keep up with, but I think that almost adds to the soap opera element that the show was trying to go for in its first season. Really just trying to be a TV melodrama with the absurdist Lynchian twist. And that vast cast of characters is among the most likable and relatable and fleshed out characters that I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing. Especially the character of Dale Cooper and Laura Palmer. Those two, they're going to have a place in my heart for the rest of my life. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I could not... it would be disingenuous of me to try and deny that. They're the centerpieces of a cerebral yet visceral story that just manages to heighten the whole experience to the umpteenth level. Laura Palmer and Dale Cooper do not feel like characters. They transcend character by the end of the series. They are so fleshed out and so real that you feel like you know them. And despite the fact that Laura Palmer is dead before the series even starts, you feel bad for her. You feel horrible for the situation that she's gotten herself in. You feel the pain. You feel the loss of Laura Palmer. And it's just so unlike anything that I feel like anyone could ever create again. I've said that so many times already, and it's only been 20 minutes of this podcast, but it's so true. Laura Palmer transcends character in so many situations where she's almost a living legend. Well, not living, she's fucking dead, but she less becomes the character of which a whodunit is centered around. She becomes the overarching legend of the town of Twin Peaks as time goes on, to the point where midway through season 2 they stop mentioning Laura Palmer. She is so far disconnected, yet throughout all of this, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, throughout all of this you feel her presence. You feel the haunting of her life and just the tragedy of what happened lingering in every single scene, because that's something that no one could ever get over, and it's something that you as the viewer don't ever quite recover from. even from the beginning of the series, leading all the way through to the end of the return. It's just so unreal, and I'm amazed that this is the child of a vision. It's something that I did not think could have been thought of in a million years, and it's something so unique, and I'm so glad that it's gotten the groundswell that it has gotten. I'm so glad that it was the phenomenon that it was, because something like Twin Peaks deserves to be seen. And if you haven't seen it, for one thing, I've ruined it for you by spoiling key elements of it, but you have no choice but to check it out eventually. Even if you just watch the first season and don't dig it. If you don't dig it, that's totally fine. But it's essential viewing to a degree. At least the first season is essential viewing to a certain degree. And it's something that I don't think I'll ever forget. I don't know how soon I'll be revisiting these first 2 seasons, or Fire Walk with me for that matter, but there's something that they're gonna stick with me forever. Even now, there are so many scenes from various points in the story that pop into my head. For example, Laura's murder is one of the most bone-chilling things that I've ever witnessed in a film. The scene wherein Leland confesses to Laura's murder, and the scene where Bob is sort of exorcised from Leland, the scene in the prison, is so moving, and it's chock full of imagery that will just never leave my head, like the Black Lodge, the man from another place, the giant, just all of these instantly recognizable things that have soldered themselves into my brain. And there's all of these amazing elements about these first 2 seasons in this film. All of these amazing elements that I think are heightened to the extreme in Season 3, Twin Peaks: The Return, from 2017. The entire thing was written and directed by David Lynch. I do believe that he had a bit more creative control than Mark Frost, although Mark Frost is credited throughout the season. Twin Peaks: The Return is something that we'll never get again. We're never going to get anything like this again. It is so out there. It abandons the melodrama of the original series almost entirely, while still maintaining the theme of Laura Palmer in the most beautiful yet heartbreaking way. I watched Twin Peaks: The Return in 1 or 2 days. I think it might have been 2 days, and by the time it was over, it was an experience that I had a lot of trouble processing, and I still don't think I fully processed it. Part of me thinks that I will never fully process it unless I sat down and watched the whole thing again, which is a possibility, but it's 18 hours, so I don't know how soon I'll be doing that again, because there's a lot of other things that I want to watch. But that being said, Twin Peaks: The Return manages to keep the through line that the original series was attempting to create of Laura Palmer's spirit sort of just populating every possible frame, even when the show has nothing to do with her. For most of Season 3 of Twin Peaks, Laura Palmer is not present at all, and it's something that is obviously attention is drawn to it, and the plot is so far out there from its original roots, but you as the viewer are constantly aware of Laura Palmer's presence. You're constantly aware of her theme, of her overarching story that lingers. I think I'm basically just repeating myself here, but you know what I'm trying to say. There's really not much that I could say about Twin Peaks Season 3 without spoiling it, and also there's nothing that I can say without sounding like a total fucking crazy person, because it is damn near impossible to even try to explain. It's so infinitely batshit crazy that for parts of it I forgot that I was even watching Twin Peaks. Like, I had to remind myself that I was watching Twin Peaks, because it's like, holy shit, Dale Cooper is in Vegas and he can't talk, and people think his name is Dougie Jones, and he's winning all of the slot machines and the prizes. Like, what the fuck? What the fuck? What? That's not even me like trying to shitpost or anything. That's actually a key part of Season 3. So Okay, the only way that I can really get into this is if I explain parts of the show. So, if you haven't been turned away from the spoilers yet, major spoiler warning for key parts of the series. So, the way that Season 2 ends off is Dale enters the Black Lodge, and he gets trapped in the Black Lodge. What happens then is Bob possesses the body of Dale Cooper, and after that, it's left on a cliffhanger. We don't know what's gonna happen. It's very, ooh, oh my god. And that was the end of the series for almost 30 years, and I can imagine how fucking infuriating that must have been. So, Season 3 picks up. Dale is trapped in the Black Lodge, and the Dale that is essentially possessed by Bob is roaming around doing all this bad shit. He's essentially become a sort of crime boss in a sense, and he doesn't really have a name, or at least I couldn't pick one up. He doesn't go by anything throughout the series. I mean, obviously those who are trying to track him call him Dale Cooper because they think he's Dale Cooper, but obviously he's not. He's Dale's doppelganger. So we'll mainly refer to him as Dale's doppelganger. So Dale is trapped in the Black Lodge, and Dale's doppelganger is going around doing some crazy shit. However, Dale manages to escape the Black Lodge, almost kills Dale's doppelganger, which winds up in him being imprisoned, which leads to a whole thing. But now Dale is outside of the Black Lodge. There are two Dales in existence. However, Dale has found himself in the body of, what was it, an insurance agent? He has found himself in the body of an empty-minded insurance agent named Dougie Jones. Okay? Bear with me. I'm gonna sound like a fucking crazy person. He's inside the body of Dougie Jones, and he can't speak. He has no memory of who he is, or what how he got there. All he remembers, which comes into play later on, all he remembers is that he came out of a wall socket. Dougie Jones, the real Dougie Jones, I may be misremembering this, I'm not sure, but I believe the old Dougie Jones, the real Dougie Jones, gets sucked into the wall socket, and Dale Cooper comes out. And by the way, they look exactly alike, so everyone thinks that Dale is Dougie Jones, and he can't tell them that he's not Dougie Jones because he can't speak, and he doesn't know that he's Dougie Jones. What the fuck, man? What the hell? See, I watched this about a month and a half ago, and I've had no one to talk to about this because I don't know anyone else that's fucking watched this. I don't know anybody else that has finished Twin Peaks, so I can't talk to them about this. This is my time to vent my confusion and just maniacal, giddy, rambling thoughts about this because I am so fucking confused. And I'm talking about all this, and I don't even know if I could fully even tell you what the plot of Twin Peaks Season 3 is. It doesn't really have a traditional plot. It's keeping up with the vast cast of characters, except there are several new characters. Many characters from the original series are entirely forgotten. They're just not there anymore. Although there are many character arcs that are continued that I personally found to be very satisfying. First of all, I found the fact of Bobby becoming a police officer. I thought that was incredibly sweet and heartwarming, and I thought it was a great evolution of his character, because obviously he was like a shit-ass teen in the original series, so 30 years later, or I guess it's 25 years later, he's a police officer, and it's just the perfect evolution for his character. And Andy and Lucy are still working at the police station, and they have a kid who's played by Michael fucking Cera. And alright, look, I love David Lynch so much, and I just love the fact that he could get the money together to make something like this, because Michael Cera plays Andy and Lucy's kid. Like, what? What the fuck? You know, Michael fucking Cera, who looks nothing like Andy or Lucy, by the way. The most confusing shit in the world. But anyway, all of this comes to a conclusion. So, Dale, I guess he steps into like this portal or something that goes to the Black Lodge and beyond. Or something like that. Honestly, I think I'm going to have to watch this whole thing again before I can form any coherent thoughts about it. But he goes to the Black Lodge and beyond, and he gets sent back to a scene from Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, where Laura jumps off of James's motorcycle and she runs into the forest, and that's supposed to be the connective tissue to the point where she gets killed by Leland. So this scene happens, but Dale is there this time, and he manages to save Laura. He intervenes and he saves Laura, potentially undoing her murder to begin with, and undoing the whole of the series. So he does this, and he wakes up sometime later with Laura Dern, although Laura Dern disappears eventually. This is the finale, and I honestly have no fucking idea what happens in it. Like, obviously I know what happens in it, but I don't know what any of it means, so I'm trying my best to try and talk about this in an intelligent way, but I definitely can't. So he goes and he looks for Laura Palmer, and he finds someone who looks exactly like Laura Palmer. He believes it is Laura Palmer, but she doesn't say that she is Laura Palmer. She thinks that he is totally confused. So Dale says, "Oh, okay, well, you're not Laura Palmer. Let me take you all the way to Twin Peaks, Oregon, and take you to your mom's house, so you can talk to your mom, and she can be the big verdict on this." So they go all the way to Oregon, and they get to what the hell was Laura's mom's name? They get to Laura's mom's house, and she's not there, and there is no record of anyone with the last name Palmer ever living in that house. So the series ends with Dale Cooper. The iconic final line of the series is, "What year is this?" And then Laura screams, and all the lights shut off, and that's the end of the show. And I just, oh my god. So I was watching this. This was the second day of my binge watch. I was watching 9 episodes a day. And that's like a lot. For me anyway, 9 whole episodes of television a day is a lot. So I get to the end of the series, and it's like close to 2 in the morning, and I'm exhausted. And I see this, and it's been a month and a half, and I still have not the slightest fucking idea what any of it means. But I think it's brilliant. I really think it's brilliant, but I just can't be sure. You know what I mean? I just can't. I'm so confused. I just don't know. So anyway, if you want my final verdict on the whole series of Twin Peaks, I unfortunately can't necessarily give it to you. I can give you my verdict on seasons 1 and 2. I think that season 1 is a very satisfying, well-rounded, standalone season of television that could very well stand on its own legs despite its obvious cliffhanger. And it continues to be one of the best seasons of television that I have ever seen, among the ranks of Mr. Robot Season 4 and Breaking Bad Season 5, just a pillar in the pantheon. As for Twin Peaks Season 2, it was ultimately way too long. I think that they really dropped the ball on it. It could have been much better. They could have done so much more with the story had they not dropped the fucking ball and revealed who killed Laura Palmer so early on. If they just never did that, it would have been totally great, and the series would have gone on for 10 fucking seasons, and it would have been a masterpiece. So, all in all, I'm gonna have to give the full series of Twin Peaks a 7 out of 10. That would be an 8 for Season 1 and a 6 for Season 2. I think that Season 2 still maintains all of the great aspects about Twin Peaks Season 1, but the negative aspects of it do bring it down that extra 2 points, because obviously it doesn't come anywhere near the peaks that Twin Peaks Season 1 managed to climb to, which is a funny term. Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me was a great film. I obviously wanted a bit more resolution in terms of the cliffhanger set up in Twin Peaks Season 2, but it's a prequel, so I obviously couldn't expect that very much. I knew from the get-go it was a prequel, so I don't really know what I was expecting. So as a prequel, it was a very serviceable, very out there experience. It's certainly something that I will never be able to recreate with any other film or piece of media, but that's part of the charm of David Lynch. David Lynch is infamous, or shall I say famous, for that. He creates visceral experiences that you just can't get anywhere else. As for Twin Peaks: The Return, let me say first, Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, I'd probably give a solid 8 or 9 out of 10, to to be perfectly honest. That was a very good film. It stands on its own. You might not be able to watch that if you haven't seen Twin Peaks, because you can't watch that before you watch Twin Peaks, because it just outright ruins Who Killed Laura Palmer. But yeah, overall it was a pretty good film. So I'll go ahead and give that one an 8 or 9 out of 10. I haven't decided. We'll call it an 8.5 out of 10. As for Twin Peaks: The Return, I think I gave it a 9 out of 10 or a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. But I just don't know. I just don't know if I stand by that. The amazing, the great parts of it are amazing, and the bad parts of it really stick out. For example, I think the series, that season in particular, just looks phenomenally cheap. And I know that David Lynch is kind of into that, because obviously Inland Empire he shot on really shitty camcorders, and that was a stylistic choice. So I don't know if that was a stylistic choice with Twin Peaks Season 3 to make the image look cheap. I just don't know. Or maybe he just doesn't know how to work modern technology, and he doesn't know how to color grade the image, because every single shot looked in camera. It didn't look like it was tampered at all in post, which is something that can't be said for even the original series. I think the original series has a beautiful color palette. It's very competently shot most of the time. And Season 3 just looked pretty cheap at times. And also, the visual effects don't help that at all. The CGI is rough, to say the least. So, overall, despite those two minor flaws, I would say that Twin Peaks Season 3 is a solid 9 out of 10. I still have no idea what the fuck any of it means, and I'm definitely going to have to revisit it sometime in the future. Definitely not now, because there's so much other shit that I need to get to, but it was a very satisfying experience, and it rounds everything off in a way that I don't quite understand, but it was very fulfilling, and this is something that I don't think I'm ever going to forget. It's one of the best television series of all time, all in all. It's among the likes of Breaking Bad, Mr. Robot, The Sopranos. It's somewhere in there, probably number 4. But yeah, that's Twin Peaks. So I guess we can move on to the much worse film discussion of this podcast. We're already running really long here. We've been going for nearly 40 minutes. We're going to be talking about Dune. Dune fucking sucks. Dune is a piece of shit. I hate it so much. I watched it for the first time back in September with a buddy over Discord. We quarantine in this house, thank you very much. But yeah, we watched Dune, and initially I thought it had some great art direction, some great set design, awesome costume design, some kind of dated but ultimately pretty cool visual effects for the time. I just thought that it was all in service of a nearly incoherent story that was definitely way cut down to a degree, and definitely way underdeveloped, way half-baked. And a lot of that is at the fault of David Lynch. David Lynch had many other projects that he wanted to work on. He took on Dune at the wrong time, I suppose. There were many other things that he wanted to do, and by the time that he was done with it, and there was still work to be done, he was done with it. So obviously the movie that we got is a bit of a jumbled mess. However, I'm not going to be talking about the movie that we got. What I'm going to be talking about is the extended cut. I believe that it was cut together for TV in the late 80s. The extended cut of Dune is just a hair under 3 hours long, and it's one of the worst films that I have ever seen. I'm not even fucking kidding. I hate it so much. I watched this film earlier today, the extended cut that is, and I couldn't tell you a single fucking thing that happens in it. When it comes to Dune, it takes a solid 2 hours for the actual movie to start, and by the time it started, you are so totally checked out that you don't even give a fuck. You just want the thing to be over, and the extended cut does not help at all. I say it's an extended cut and not a director's cut because it's not a director's cut. David Lynch had nothing to do with it. In fact, David Lynch isn't even credited as a director in the final cut of the Dune extended cut. Which was really confusing to me, because I thought that, I knew that Lynch had nothing to do with the extended cut. but I figured he still would have been credited. But no, I watched the opening credits of this film, and up pops the name, directed by Alan Smithee. And I just think to myself, what? What the fuck? What? Alan Smithee didn't direct the footage of the film because it's still Dune. David Lynch still directed Dune, and he directed all the footage that got dropped. What did Alan Smithee direct, necessarily? Is that worth totally scrapping his name off the project altogether? I mean, I really don't know. Like, if Smithee was in charge of putting together the extended cut, that would make sense, but he didn't direct the film. You know what I mean? I mean, you might not know what I mean. I don't know. I don't even know what the fuck I mean right now, honestly. So the way that I'm going to go about this review here is I'm going to start off with the good and then talk about the bad. We're going to split it into two even parts. So we're going to start off with the good. Like I said before, the set design and the art direction in general is so fucking gorgeous. So much of it just looks incredible. There's some amazing miniatures and matte paintings that are put to use. It looks gorgeous for the most part, except for the obvious dated visual effects. Outside of that, there isn't too much to really credit. It has a pretty good score done by Toto, which I was very surprised to see the first time I saw this film in the credits. Original score by Toto is like, oh, hey, how about that? But apart from that, yeah, this movie's a big fucking dumpster fire. I mean, I have to credit it because it gave us Kyle MacLachlan, who was eventually on Twin Peaks. But the thing is that so much of this movie is just fucking awful and just so devoid of any sort of substance or quality that it makes me want to claw my eyes out. So I guess we can get into the bad here. The dialogue is appallingly terrible. Now, I don't know who wrote this, actually. Let me look this up. Look up Dune 1984 writers. So this was written by David Lynch. Written and directed by David Lynch. I don't know what the fuck he was thinking when he went to write this. It's garbage. It's literal garbage. Now, from what I hear, David Lynch was really rushing this, like I said before, because he wanted to work on other projects. But honestly, dude, like this makes me question his talent as a director altogether at times, man. It made me want to die. Like, especially the extended cut, which I'm not gonna blame on Lynch. That wasn't his doing. If anything, the director's cut is the theatrical cut of the film. But holy shit, man, the extended cut is so unnecessary. Because let me run you through this here. So the additional content is almost entirely voiceover explaining the plot to you. So the film has a 7 or 8 minute long prologue tacked onto it at the beginning, which shows essentially just a slideshow of paintings. I mean, it could just be concept art, honestly, I don't know. And it has this very sort of rusty voiced voiceover guy explaining the plot of Dune and explaining the bit of time leading up to where Dune starts. And it's so unnecessary because all of the information that was conveyed in that opening sort of prologue is conveyed in 2 exposition scenes later. So if you're going to put in that prologue, that's fine, I guess, but cut out the scenes that explain it again, because what you're stuck with is so much repetitive information being thrown at you in such a non-interesting way, and it makes for a miserable viewing experience, an absolutely miserable viewing experience. And I don't know who thought this was a good idea. Like, did Alan Smithee want to do this? Was he just doing it as a cash grab? I simply don't know, because Dune in and of itself feels like a cash grab. It feels like something that was trying to ride off the success of Star Wars, which is something that would make a lot of sense because it came out the year after Return of the Jedi. It seems like it's just trying to go for that sort of space opera type feel, the big blockbuster space opera, but it so totally falls on its face in terms of story, because the story is not that interesting, and it's told in such a disjointed, weird-ass way, to the point where by the time the main plot starts, the movie's more than half over, and you're just burnt out as an audience member. Or at least I was. I mean, I'm sure there's people who love this fucking thing, but I could not get behind any of it, man. Even the visual effects, which I thought were charming in a very rudimentary sense. Sometimes they were pretty cool. I think the Worms of Arrakis were done pretty well, and I think a lot of the miniatures are awesome. But then there's a lot of blue screen shots and just bullshit that looks awful and makes me want to claw my eyes out. It's literally the weirdest thing ever. But Sting, fucking Sting, what the hell, fucking Sting. I just that had nothing to do with anything, but I feel like if I didn't bring it up then, I wasn't going to bring it up. Fucking Sting is in this movie. Of the Police, Sting is in this fucking movie, and he does such an awful job. He's almost the worst performance in this movie. I would say that there is not a single good performance in this movie to begin with, but the worst performance of this movie definitely probably would have to go to whoever plays the Baron. Jesus Christ, I've never seen anything more over the top and unfitting than the performance of Baron, whatever the fuck his name is. The guy with all the like blisters on his face. You know what I'm talking about. That fucking guy. But yeah, see the theatrical the theatrical cut doesn't have many legs to stand on its own, but the extended cut goes so far into the realm of just dog shit with the constant voiceover that comes in at, like, the moment that you're immersed in the fucking movie. This voiceover guy just explains the plot to you. He says, "Hey, did you know that you're watching a movie?" Shut the fuck up, dude. Like, come on. It's awful. I don't know what else to say about it. It's fucking awful. And I wish that I could unwatch it. I wish that I could get those 3 hours back. I'm glad that I watched the theatrical cut, because at least I've seen it. I want to go out of my way and try and watch all of David Lynch's catalog. But, like, what the fuck is Dune? You know, what the fuck is Dune? David Lynch said that this is the only movie that he wasn't proud of, and I can see why. This movie is a fucking nightmare to get through, and honestly, I just wish that I could get those 3 hours of my life back. Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little angry here. I'm getting a little heated. Honestly, most of the problems that I have with this are entirely in the extended cut. The extended cut is such a lazy cash grab piece of shit. I just don't see the point in it besides getting royalties off of airing it on TV. There's one scene in particular that I seem to remember from the extended cut where, what the hell is her name? The housekeeper lady. She's a short. Oh my god, I can't remember anything from this fucking movie. I don't remember any names. The short girl with the bright blue eyes. There's a scene in the extended cut where she speaks with Paul's mother, except her eyes don't have that bright blue. Oh my god, bright blue glow that they have in the rest of the movie, because that's an extended scene. That the effects in that scene just weren't finished. They released this movie with unfinished visual effects. What? How do you fucking do that? How do you pass that off and call it a movie? This isn't a movie. This is a work print, and a really fucking bad work print at that. Jesus Christ, I never want to watch this shit again, and I'm so glad that I got it over with, because fucking hell, I am infuriated by this movie. I don't even have anything else to say about it, because the rest of it is just me screaming about how disappointed I was and how shitty it is as a whole. I'm going to give this movie a fucking 1 out of 10. I don't even care. This movie is garbage. I would probably give the theatrical... oh my god, I can't say theatrical to save my life. I would probably give the theatrical... See? Look at that. Theatrical cut a 2 or 3 out of 10. Primarily because of the score and the art direction. Purely those two elements. That's it. They were very fitting to the space opera genre. The rest of it, I could not care less for. This movie needs to fucking burn. Honestly, it's horrible. I never want to watch it again. Pretty pumped for the new Dune movie, though. Denis Villeneuve. I loved Blade Runner 2049. Very, very excited to see where that goes. The trailer was very promising. So I guess we'll see this coming October. If I haven't gotten burnt out on this podcast by then, maybe I'll review it. Who knows? I'll definitely call back to this exact part of the podcast. Anyway, folks, I think that's going to have to do it for this episode of With Hayden. Really hope you guys enjoyed. I'm having a lot of fun with this series so far. It's really great to just sit down and ramble, not go off any script, just stutter and scream about whatever the fuck I want. Next episode, we're going to be talking about Zappa, the 2020 documentary, because I've been meaning to watch that for a while, and this will give me an excuse to get around to watching it. So yeah, we're going to talk about Zappa, maybe talk about a bit of Zappa's music, because I'm a pretty big Frank Zappa fan, you know, not trying to toot my own horn or anything. Well, I'm a pretty big Frank Zappa fan. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this episode of With Hayden, because I certainly did. This was way longer than the first episode. Sorry for that. I had a lot to talk about, I guess. I'm still trying to build a groundwork for what type of format I want the series to be like. I don't know if I want the episodes to say relatively short or be long like this one, because right now we're at 51 minutes. Obviously, I'm probably going to cut this down a bit, but yeah, I don't know what to do yet. In fact, if you have any input on how you think this should be formatted, if you think it should be shorter or longer, if I should talk about more or less, just let me know. Leave a comment. Any and all feedback is greatly appreciated. So yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, type a comment. Oh my god, sorry, I hit the mic stand. Type a comment saying that, like, I don't know, maybe Coney 2012? Maybe? I don't know. That's up to you. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll see you in the next one.